This is the ROS Developers Podcast, episode 59.
The ROS Developers Podcast, the ROS Developers. The ROS Developers Podcast, the ROS Developers.
Hello, ROS developers, and welcome to the ROS Developers Podcast, the podcast that gives you insights from the experts about how to program your robots with ROS. This is Ricardo from The Construct, and today I would like to dedicate this episode to those ROS developers that use ROS on the cloud. You know, on the cloud is nicer, on the cloud is easier, on the cloud is faster, so please use the robot on the cloud, especially the ROS robots. And before starting with the main subject of today we are going to talk with the person behind RoboMaker, the cloud robotics solution from Amazon. And before that, let me remind you about our online academy. Yes, at The Construct we have created an online academy named the Robot Ignite Academy, which contains a ROS learning path for beginners. We start by teaching you the basics of Linux and Python for robotics, and then we continue teaching you all the basic ROS concepts that are required to become a master of ROS, a real ROS developer. Then we conclude with a course that teaches you how to build your own robot and how to ROSify it. So you add the ROS control and simulation for that robot, and finally you become a ROS developer. I will put a link to the academy in the show notes. Now it's a moment. It's my pleasure to introduce you with Roger Barga. Roger is an expert in computing clouds. First, he was working as group program manager for Microsoft Azure, and now he works as general manager of Amazon Web Services for robotics and autonomous services. He is the leader of the AWS RoboMaker, the robotics cloud solution created by Amazon to speed up ROS development. Welcome to the podcast, Roger.
Thank you, Ricardo.
My pleasure to have you here. We are here seated at the ROSCon 2019, and maybe the listeners will hear a little bit of background noise, but I think that we managed to have the sound.
Hey, before we begin, I wanted to thank you. I really enjoyed your workshop yesterday on actually machine learning, reinforcement learning, and gazebo, and it was a thrill to actually use the construct for that course. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really appreciated coming from a real expert on cloud, because for the listeners, you don't know, yesterday at the ROSCon, we at the Construct we have delivered a workshop on how to train robots, ROS-based robots, on machine learning, actually on reinforcement learning specifically. And then Roger was one of the attendants to the workshop. Thank you, really appreciate it. Sure. And but here we came here not to talk about my book. We came here to talk about your book.
Awesome.
And then your book is AWS RoboMaker. So can you explain to the audience what it is, AWS RoboMaker?
Yeah, it is a service that we have built to help developers to build, test, and deploy, and then manage their robot applications, all as cloud services.
Okay, and but is any kind of robot or specific types of robots?
We're targeting ROS robots right now because that's where we think the action is at and where there's the most value to add.
Okay, yeah. Yes, that's what the listeners wanted to hear. It's for not only the ROS robots. Yes. And maybe we'll see in the future. Maybe if everything goes okay, there are other.
We are really bullish behind ROS. We think ROS is where it's at. ROS is going to be the Linux of robots in the future.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. So now, then, one question: can I ask you your opinion about, now that you mentioned this? Do you think that it's possible that some other company could create another framework in order to compete with ROS? Like, for example, what happens with Android and iOS. You know, that's kind of this competition. So,
Yes.
what is your opinion?
So you should never say never to something happening in the future, but you also have to appreciate the momentum and the user community behind ROS. That is a significant asset, and it has incredible momentum. If you're attending the talks here at this conference this week, you hear all the great advancements, the contributions of the community. It would be very hard pressed for someone to justify how they could build something that's differentiated versus contributing to this momentum that's going behind ROS.
Okay. Yes, I do agree with you. I do agree completely. Okay, so after knowing your opinion, let's continue with the RoboMaker that you are presenting here at the the ROSCon. And then my next question is, why did Amazon decide to enter into the robotics sector? Because and when? Why and when? Because I knew that Amazon has bought some companies of robotics for their warehouses, to guide the shelves and so on for manage. But I wouldn't consider that getting into robotics. I mean, it's just I would say, in my opinion, it's like buying a product that is working, but starting to work on creating those tools for developers of robots. That's something more. Can you tell me?
But the reality is that Amazon has been investing in and building robots for quite some time. We actually have been, we've been looking at how to automate all aspects of our fulfillment process to serve our customers better. And so while certain acquisitions are very highly visible, that's actually a very small piece. We actually have hundreds of thousands of robots that are working alongside of humans to help us deliver packages fastest to our customers. And those same developers gave us insights into what tooling that they were building, what tooling that they wanted. And in fact, many of them are actually using ROS inside of the company. So this helped inform the value we could add to developers outside the company.
Okay, now I understand. Then I would suggest that this is kind of a similar thing what happened with AWS, I mean the cloud services, because you were using in-house, and then you, at some point in time, it was so you were using for yourselves, and then you decided to release to the audience. Could it be something similar?
It is actually very analogous to that, because we see a class of developers whose needs are not being served well today. They were doing something which we had been doing ourselves, very much like Amazon Web Services. Just like for robotics, we saw a developer community that was not being well served. And actually, there was an incredible amount of undifferentiated heavy lifting that they were all doing. We interviewed over 200 companies outside of Amazon that were building robots. We asked them where they spent their time, where they got the most value. And it was striking that most of them were spending 85 to 90% of their time on this undifferentiated heavy lifting. If they needed simulation, they had a rack and stack machines to run simulation. To get a good version of ROS up and running, they had a fork off of ROS, pick the pieces they wanted, harden that code. They had to get all the development environments set up the same to get started. None of that adds value to their real IP or intellectual property they want to add to their robot. And so much the same way that ROS was created to accelerate research, we thought we could build RoboMaker and the accompanying services to actually accelerate developers and allow them to spend more time innovating on their robot application.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So that's super interesting, because for us, you know, I've been ROS developer for many years, and then so we saw that Amazon is starting to invest onto that, and then we wanted to know. I'm sure that many of the listeners, they also wanted to know the motivations and so on, and when did you start it, and it's very clarifying this. So very good. And then I have a question here about the time where. Let me see. So, because you now are the general manager of the RoboMaker product or section, but before that you were working on you were general manager of development of Kinesis.
Yes.
Can you tell us what is Kinesis?
Yeah, so Kinesis is about streaming data. I love streaming data. I loved working on that service. We actually it's a family of services that help our customers get data off of devices and stream it continuously to the cloud, where they can analyze, they can process it and get real-time insights into their business. That's an exciting space to be working in.
Okay, like a camera, for example, that is streaming all the time?
Our phones, if you actually take a Lyft or an Uber, the data about your ride, where your Uber is at, and as they're driving to you, or your Lyft, all that data streams off of their devices to the cloud to your phone.
Okay.
Sonos is a Kinesis customer, so your Sonos Bluetooth radios are streaming continuous data about their performance and the applications that are running on it, so Sonos can understand the customer experience. It is used across almost every application domain where they want real-time insights into what happens to their devices or their customers. And this, by the way, is actually what led me to understand the opportunity in robotics and the challenges.
Is it? So how did you relate that into robotics?
Yeah.
That the streaming of data into robotics. Right?
So many of our customers in Kinesis, these are devices out on the edge, not unlike a robot. And the data that comes off of these devices is actually very valuable to process in real time. Think fleet management, where you want to know where is my robot, so you can track it. I want to send commands to it, and I want to have a constant connection. At the time in Kinesis, we were thinking about pushing machine learning models down to the edge to process, not unlike what we're showing in our booth here this week with NVIDIA Jetson, where we can build a machine learning model on the cloud at scale, deploy a very lightweight machine learning model to the edge on a robot to process as it moves around its environment. And so this allowed me to become more familiar with the edge, the value of edge processing. And then we started seeing the robotics and started talking to roboticists about what machine learning models, and that's what allowed us to understand the challenges they were facing just building their apps, managing their apps.
Yeah, I see. But then at some point in time, then you decided to jump into this project. It was a new project, or it was already started?
It was a new. We were actually at the time. My team was thinking about how are we going to process data at the edge? What role will the cloud have when the edge becomes more and more compute intensive, like many of the robots we're seeing here around us today? And we actually then realized that robots are really edge connected devices that generate data. They need to be programmed, managed, have a relationship with the cloud, take advantage of cloud services to be more powerful. And that's exactly the thesis of RoboMaker. And so what was a document on edge processing became, here are the challenges in robotics and the opportunities to make robots smarter, more cloud connected, and make the development experience much more seamless for developers, for ROS developers in particular.
Okay, make perfect sense. Okay, so very clear. And then let me ask you the next question is, you started with this RoboMaker platform, and it's based on ROS.
Yes.
Then why did you decide? So if I was asked last year, about Amazon, if I was asked, hey, what do you think that Amazon could do about robotics? Then my bet would have been that you would develop your own framework for programming robots. Yes. Like your Android for ROS. So, but instead you jumped into ROS. So why did you decide to use ROS instead of developing your own framework, like looks like Google is doing for his robotics cloud?
So Amazon is very customer centric. We don't start by saying that we're going to invent on a customer's behalf. We start talking to customers of what tools do you use today, and what do you find hard about that? And these developers were by and large using ROS. Cruise, if you look at the history of acquisitions, Cruise Automation here is using ROS. So there's a long history of successful companies, which gave us evidence that developers were taking ROS applications into commercial applications and having commercial success. We walked the halls of CES, Consumer Electronics Symposium in Las Vegas, and I believe it was early 2018. There were about 90 companies showing robots. We'd find the developers who were at the booth. We asked, what did you use? They said ROS.
ROS, yeah.
Yeah, and so we worked customer backwards. And so we started interviewing them about the pain points. And nobody said, go build this new framework. They said, just make ROS more commercial grade. And there was already an effort called ROS 2. Help make that happen, help us with fleet management, help us with simulation. So really by talking to these developers and working backwards from their problems, that helps us define this service. And what we look for opportunities to invent on behalf of our customers, and that invention would be a scale out simulation service. It's serverless. But again, we're using tools that they want to use, they're familiar with using. And so it's much easier for adoption and familiarity.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I don't completely agree. So I don't see the point on developing a new framework unless, there are some options, so unless you want to compete for whatever the reason, because you want to take the market and you don't want the people who owns the current framework, then maybe you want to take them down So that's one solution.
There are probably 100 companies here exhibiting robots today.
Yeah.
We want all 100 of these companies to be successful, as well as the next 500 that don't actually have to harden their own version of ROS. That's when you're actually going to start something happening, where automation and robotics is really going to take off.
Okay, yes. Let's hope that in automation it's still a hard. There's a lot of work to do. The ROS industrial guys, they are doing what they can, so as much as they can, but still it's difficult to convince them. What do you think about it?
So we're happy to have recently joined ROS Industrial. We think some of the investments they're making, we're part of the ROS 2's technical steering committee where we're actually contributing open source software. But you're right, if you talk to any one of these startup companies today, or even mature companies, it's amazing the amount of technical talent and the diversity of talent they have to have.
Yeah.
Hardware engineers, low-level hardware engineers that actually build the hardware, those that program the hardware, those that write the applications that are on top of it, those that are going to operate the robots in production. It's a miracle that when one of these companies actually take off, everything has to align just perfect, including the market timing. We think that can be simpler. We really think that can be simpler. I mean, if you look at the automotive industry 100 years ago, the single manufacturer built their entire everything, like a roboticist today, right?
Exactly.
And you fast forward today, and an automotive company maybe builds only 20%, the rest they get from other providers.
Yeah.
And so again, we see us playing a role, but others will actually provide the hardware, commodity hardware for robots that'll take that ease of burden off these startups. So we'll see this evolve in time.
Okay. I hope so.
Yes.
But I don't hope. I do agree on that, because it's the path of least resistance.
Yes.
I think it's going to take time, because changing the current trend is difficult. But I do agree that it's going to be in just some. So very good that you joined the ROS Industrial. I didn't know. I knew that you were on the ROS 2 committee, but not on the ROS Industrial.
Yeah, we've been working on that one for a while, and it just got recently public about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So hey, listeners of the ROS Developers Podcast, this is the news. That's the first place where you have heard just 2 weeks ago. So providing you the news about ROS. Okay, so let's continue. So, in your opinion, who would be the typical user of RoboMaker? Who should pay attention to RoboMaker and give it a try?
Okay. We'll start first with the developers, because that was our initial target audience. And if I'm just want to get started, and I've got a team of 5 engineers, I could spend weeks trying to get our software environments all the same.
Yeah.
Just as you said in your workshop yesterday, the beauty of the cloud, we can all connect to a cloud service, and all of our development environments are going to be the same. Our Cloud IDE supports ROS 1 and ROS 2. We support ROS 1 kinetic and melodic, and we support ROS 2 dashing.
Okay.
And so immediately I'm up and running. Part of RoboMaker are cloud service extensions. These are ROS nodes, which we have released as open source software that will allow a robot to connect to the cloud. So no longer do I have to go read a manual on how to use AWS. If I want to add Poly and Lex so I can talk to my robot, and it can talk to me. If I want to stream video, LiDAR, or radar up to the cloud for processing, we have a node for that.
Okay, so they only have to launch those nodes, and that's it. So the only thing that they need to know is which launch it is, and that's all.
Yeah, what topics to publish to, and what no.
Okay,
we can actually stream log data for turning logging on a remote robot to monitor it. We can turn metrics like GPS coordinates, battery power through a CloudWatch node that we have added. And we maintain a secure connection to the AWS cloud. Only the robot can talk to AWS, and similarly, it's an encrypted connection to send data and commands back to the robot with a secure rotating keys for security.
Wow.
We have what we call AWS IoT Greengrass running on the robot, and it's like a vault. It is like a vault in which all of the code runs, which makes your robot highly secure. And only the user with the keys, the public and private keys, can get access to the code and the messages to process it. So as a developer, I've just gained a lot. And now, before I put my robot in production, if I want to simulate it, we offer simulation as a service in Gazebo.
Yeah.
We offer Gazebo 7, we offer Gazebo 9, and we will be adding support for Gazebo Ignition as it matures. And so now if I want to test my application, I can actually do so with Gazebo. It's serverless, it's on demand, so I can just test ROS nodes, or if I want to do a full-scale 3D environment with a robot running around, if I wanted to run 100 in parallel for regression testing to make sure that robot's not going to break for any operating environment in which I think I should run, I can scale up to 100 simulations. And we have also got reinforcement learning integrated. So something called Deep Racer, you can actually train a robot car like you were showing us yesterday by integrating simulation with reinforcement learning.
Okay.
So for the developer, right there, that adds a lot.
Okay.
But we also have fleet management. Now you're changing somebody. Now you're the person that's, I've got to operate 500 robots or 10 in my building. And I can actually see all of my robots that are registered. I can put them into fleets, like such as a fleet in facility A, a fleet of robots in facility B in a different building. And I can actually monitor them. I can turn monitoring on those robots.
Okay.
I can see what versions of the applications are running, and I can do an over-the-air update. So once my developers say, boss, we got a new version of the application, it's better, it's tested, go ahead and deploy it. The operator can choose the fleet that they want to update. They can specify what percentage to update concurrently. Like, I only want 10% of my robots being updated.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, if more than 15% of the updates fail, stop the deployment and roll it back. We do all that. We manage all that for you. We're adding support for conditional over-the-air deployment. So you can say, actually, I only want to update under these conditions: battery greater than 50%, or I'm plugged into the wall with power, and these conditions have to be satisfied, and only then will we deploy to the robot. We're going to keep building on that functionality to allow an operator to operate robots at scale, like the panel we had this morning at ROSCON.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Unfortunately, I was not able to go to the panel. I was here attending the people that
You were
is coming
working.
to this. Yes, I was working. Yes. I was telling to Yuhon, who is the member of our team, that when we can hear that it's so different when you come to the conference to listen, to attend to the speeches and so on. And when you come here to work, it's more stressful.
I feel sorry for my team who are actually representing here and manning our booth and showing our demos.
Yeah.
I'd love for them to be in the talks because it's informative and it's fun.
Yeah, well, it's your job also, because you have to be there, you have to know about the latest things, so that's great. One time, it will arrive to me at some point in time. When we grow the company better, so it will arrive to me, so great. Okay, so then we have understood correctly, then kind of targeting two types of customers. The ones are the developers, for simplifying their way of developing their code and testing and everything. And then the second one is for the fleet managers. So all those people that are they have a lot of robots that are operating in an area, and they have to manage different missions, different upgrades, different conditions of fault or recharging or something. So
That's right. And that's why we can finally, where we began our conversation, is what is RoboMaker? And you can actually succinctly say robot is DevOps for robotics. We support developers and we support the operators. DevOps.
Okay. So I think that this is going to be the tagline for the podcast. Is RoboMaker equals DevOps for robotics. Great. And then, so can I ask you about how was the development process of RoboMaker? Did you start from scratch, or did you build on top of other already existing systems, apart from ROS? I mean,
Right.
Yeah, one of the technologies.
One of the first things we did is we built a team that would actually contribute open source software to ROS2 and to Gazebo. And so we have a team that worked closely with Open Robotics and the community on the technical steering committee. So we got that going. Once we got that going, we actually designed RoboMaker from the ground up. We used a lot of information from Amazon Robotics and other customers about tools they had built, experiences that they wanted. We built on Cloud9, which is AWS's IDE as a service.
Yes.
And we tailored it and configured it to actually be more tailored for robotics developers. Of course, we integrated with all other AWS services. We're actually still adding more integrations. You'll see more in the year to come that makes the robot do more. But RoboMaker itself is in fact built independently from the ground up.
Okay. And how was the development process? I did ask you that question this already. So what do we need to install in our computer to start using RoboMaker?
Absolutely nothing. The entire experience runs on the cloud. And so you can build your robot, you can test your robot. Now, the first installation step you'll do, once you've actually used RoboMaker, built and tested your app, you'll install Greengrass on your robot. There are scripts that can do that for you. Once Greengrass has been installed on your robot, you now have a digital twin of your robot in the cloud that you can add to a fleet. And then it's ready to have your application deployed over the air.
Yeah.
So you may never have actually touched your robot. Your remote robot may be sitting somewhere out on an oil rig.
Yeah.
And in fact, we actually have a demonstration where you can choose from a library of missions and do over-the-air deployment to a drone that's setting somewhere after you've tested it in simulation.
Oh, no.
So again, once you have green grass and once you have it registered, that robot can be anywhere in the world and you can update it. So
Yeah.
nothing to install. Now that being said, we have heard from developers that they actually love the IDE experience on their laptop. I'm sure you hear that too, as much as we love our cloud
Yes.
IDEs. and so we will be supporting a laptop local development experience where they can then integrate with RoboMaker on the cloud and do the local development as well.
Okay, that's for the case that they want to install, but it's not mandatory. So
No,
actually,
nothing to install.
Nothing to
Yeah.
install, just on the robot, the physical robot, in case that you want to communicate directly from the RoboMaker cloud.
Yes.
So you need to install this green grass daemon or service.
Yep.
as a service. So I will put a link on the show notes
Thank you.
for the people to the green grass, so they can know better about that, and maybe they can install how to install in the robot.
That's right.
Okay. And then let's say I am a ROS developer and I want to build my next ROS programs with RoboMaker. Which services should I use from the ones that RoboMaker provides?
You're obviously going to use our cloud IDE.
Yeah.
Hopefully use Gazebo and test in simulation. All good roboticists should test in simulation first, so you'll definitely will use that.
Okay.
In terms of our cloud service extensions, I'll tell you the number one cloud service extension that customers use is CloudWatch. Developers want to know the GPS coordinates of the robot. What's the
Yes.
battery power?
Yes.
They can build these beautiful dashboards and understand the speed of the robot and monitor that, or stream log records like ROS bags up to the cloud where they can analyze them from different robots. And so they'll probably add CloudWatch and use CloudWatch on AWS as well. And then finally, they'll use our fleet management to deploy it to the robot once they're ready to actually see it run in action. Our service offers a number of open source sample applications. We've written them for both the Husarian and the Turtlebot on ROS 1, and we'll have them available on ROS 2, the sample apps. In fact, I believe we do already. And so literally, if you have a Husarian or a Turtlebot, you install Greengrass on it, you can actually build and deploy your first application within an hour and see it actually running, and look at the simulator and see it actually running in Sim 2 and the Sim to Real. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's showing the same results on the simulation or in the real
Yes,
robot.
that's right.
So we would say that you need the IDE, the Cloud9 IDE,
Yep.
and we need the Gazebo on the cloud also,
yep.
and then we'll need the CloudWatch you mentioned.
Yeah, if you want to install that node, that you want to use that service on AWS.
Yeah, it's kind of
just
optional. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
optional. And then the other one would be the deployment
fleet
system
management for RoboMaker.
Or it doesn't have to be a fleet. It could be just a simple robot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. And how much cost would it be for that application, that typical example of development?
So we offer a free tier for RoboMaker, which is credits of around $20, and customers can actually build multiple applications end-to-end and deploy it. It's pennies. It's pennies to use the ID. And to be clear, we don't add any charges. When you're using Cloud9, it's just the standard list price for Cloud9 for doing the development. RoboMaker charges no additional premium for that. We vend the copies of ROS as free open source software. We charge an amount for your simulation based on how complex your simulation is. So it really depends on what you're simulating. If you want to simulate a 3D world and hundreds of different simulations, that would actually charge. We charge by simulation unit, which is a little bit more to get into. We have good documentation on our website that helps people understand it. But we encourage them to try the free tier and build a few applications. And we actually show you exactly how many simulation units and how many resources you've consumed. Then people can get a sense of, oh, this is what it's going to take. It's actually very modest.
Okay, great. Then you mentioned that the RoboMaker already supports ROS 1 and ROS 2, and then what does it mean that it supports both? What does it mean? So it's
as a developer, when I log on to the Cloud9 IDE, I'm asked, want to build an application? I say, I'm building an app. Let's get into the application development section. You get to choose what version of you want for that application. As our development environment for RoboMaker allows you to be building multiple apps. So I may be preparing to deploy multiple apps to my robot. One can be built with ROS 1, one can be built with ROS 2.
Yeah, so for example, one for navigation that runs on ROS 2, and another one that is maybe object recognition that still runs on ROS 1.
Wait, I mean, connected with the ROS bridge.
With the ROS bridge,
That's
exactly.
right. And so this is the kind of the flexibility our ID allows you to do. You can choose what version of ROS you want for that particular application. We preload it along with our cloud service extensions. We give you access to scalable compute and storage behind the scenes. So if you want to compile, well, you've got access to a CPU. You need to store 10 versions of your app. We scale out the storage to actually store all the versions of your app so you can keep them all in a workspace.
What do you mean, versions of the apps?
Well, so I may have actually written a version of my application last week. I may have an idea and I don't want to lose that version, so I can actually create a new version and actually then modify it. And I can actually test both in simulation and deploy both the apps to a simulator and see, which one does better for
and
clean.
compare,
That's right.
Okay. It's kind of a Git or a Git with labels.
Yes.
So you have the label of this version that was this.
Exactly. You can actually add labels. And in fact, this is a nuance now that we're actually getting down to this level. It's kind of fun to talk about. So let's say we've actually built 2 simulations and 2 versions of our app. The simulations are the same room we're trying to vacuum, let's say, for fun.
Okay.
And what I can do in my simulation, because we're integrated with AWS out of the box, even in simulation, I can actually turn CloudWatch metrics and say, I want to measure time to vacuum. I want to measure battery power used. And that can actually set those metrics on each one of the simulations. And so let's say I ran 100 of those simulations. Do I want to watch each one in parallel? No. But when the simulation is complete, there's a file that I can open up and it will show me the CloudWatch metrics, how much power was used, how much time did it take to vacuum, did I miss any spots? I can set all these alerts and metrics that I want to monitor and actually look at these numbers and actually see programmatically query them and say, okay, how did my application do this time? Which application did better across these 200 simulations?
That's
amazing. We can automate that.
That's amazing. And then you build kind of panels so with those metrics so you can see it depends on how you configure.
You can graphically see the bar charts.
Exactly.
Yes, you can actually compare. You can write a script to compare them yourself. So this is the automation that we want to bring for robotics. Can you imagine how much faster you can run? If you defined 100 tests and you know the metrics of your application did 6 months later, you're about to deploy a new version of it. Wouldn't it be nice to actually automate this and have it say, yep, we're 10% better. Let's do it.
Exactly. So you can, with data, you can back and say that it's 10% better.
That's right.
Based on these metrics that we have defined.
Yeah.
Great, amazing. And then, you already mentioned about the types of distributions that you are supporting: kinetic, melodic, and ROS dashing.
Yep.
And how are your plans to support for future distributions?
Yes.
For example, do you know that the last one in ROS 1 is going to be Noetic in 2020?
Yep.
And then I think that by the end of this year, it's going to be another one on ROS 2.
Yes.
Thank you
for that. So our current plan of record, because the LTS support, the long-term support versions, not all versions of ROS have long-term support. Every version of long-term support ROS, we plan to include it in RoboMaker, because often the incremental versions are actually experimental versions, which may or may not be supported long-term. They're subject to change. We actually will support those in RoboMaker that have long-term support. Now that will not preclude us from releasing a beta version. So if there's a version of ROS 2 that does not have LTS, we may want to share that with customers for early on for beta. But we're actually going to really support all the LTS versions of ROS to answer your question.
Okay, clear, very clear. And then, so I already asked you about the software for fleet administration. So you explain and what is the purpose, and then I think that we have covered all the questions that we have. While you were mentioning this, so I had another question that was not on my original list.
Please.
It's about this usually when people need to create an application, then they usually have to add new packages that are not installed or libraries that they have built, and then how does it manage that, Amazon RoboMaker?
Yeah, so a customer can actually upload their own packages. I may have some proprietary packages that just my team has access to because we've developed it, it's our IP, and in fact that's where things get interesting, where a user actually uploads their own packages that they've been building for months, or it's actually the secret sauce for the previous version of the robot. And our service allows a customer to basically upload packages from their own repository, from their own storage, and actually include it in their application. It's your code, it's your data, we never touch that. And so basically that's for you to manage exclusively. So even though you're pulling from open source, you can combine it and override it with your own packages, your own versions of the packages, and that becomes your total bundle of an application which gets deployed to the robot.
Okay. So then they can actually install the Debian packages, or do they have to upload by using source or a Git, or they can do on the RoboMaker itself? They can do a apt update command, and then they will be installed and then stored in that specific application.
Yes.
For that. Okay.
Yeah, we've actually had customers, even in simulation, upload their own simulator because they add their own simulator.
Okay,
so even though we support Gazebo, we're hosting whatever you want for us in your simulation. So we've had customers actually bundle Drake, which is not Gazebo. It's a great simulator. And that's what we're so excited about, by the way, for Gazebo Ignition, is that ability that we can let customers choose their physics engine, choose their rendering engine, choose their simulation, and that kind of flexibility, or turn off rendering. Exciting future in simulation.
Impressive, super cool. And then final question then, as an expert then in the sector, so what is your vision for the market of service robots in the close future? So I'm asking you that, given that many service robotics companies, they have closed recently, as you know. Recently, in the last 2 years, let's say, like we think Robotics, Jibo, Anki, Mayfield. So what is your
I cried a tear when Anki and all these robots went by, because again, it's hard. It really is a hard business, and these are smart companies, these are smart people, these are wonderful robots. Our vision is that, again, ROS continues to mature. ROS 2 is becoming commercial grade, secure, tested. I'd love to see more startups have a much easier time getting up and running faster. That service is not just from AWS, but other companies. Even universities will be building services and hosting them on AWS for robotics developers to tap into for navigation and others that will simplify this whole process. So we'll see more of these companies successfully succeed. And there's a number of great companies here which are doing great work in service robots. We hope that the services and tools we provide them allow them to actually move faster and actually dedicate more time to actually focusing on their customer.
Okay. And then would you recommend, for example, related to the same question, so imagine a person a robotics engineer that is thinking about building a startup in robotics. So what would be your advice to them? Is a startup on robotics, on service robots, so building service robots. So would you give him an advice related to that?
Unfortunately, I don't have enough insight into service robots to understand the dynamics and the challenges to make a recommendation like that. I find roboticists tend to be missionaries in their field trying to change the world, and so those people often do change the world. We are seeing, in ground mobility robots, in fulfillment, logistics, warehouses, supply chain, where we're seeing a sea change take place there, where if you have a product that needs to be moved, again, in a warehouse, for fulfillment, for supply chain, that area is exploding in terms of adoption of robots. And so that's an area which is certainly ripe for innovation and opportunity for startups, and many of them are demonstrating and talking here today. It's been exciting to see. Unfortunately, service robotics, I don't have enough of a read on that right now. We've been focusing really on ground mobility for the applications I've described.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. And basically is that the service robotics industry or products industry still not mature enough. The market has not enough demand, based on my opinion.
On your opinion. Unfortunately, I couldn't say about that. And but what I will say, service robots have different elements. They have to work closely with people. There's a human-computer interaction there, which has to be understood, and that's nuanced as heck. You think robotics is hard enough, you start adding that in, that's also another challenge. But again, there's some interesting research, some interesting pioneers doing great work there. They will figure it out.
Okay, yes, let's hope that. Actually, we are working on that, on making this easier and so on. So
we're pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly. We are pulling on the same direction. And then, so I said that last question, but actually I have here 2 more questions here. So anything that you are presenting here at the ROSCON.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my team held a workshop yesterday where with collaborators, they talked about the security work that we were doing on the ROS2 Technical Steering Committee. That was a joy because it was the first security threat model that had been built for robots, in particular ROS2 robots, that help a developer understand the threat vectors that can be posed to a robot so they can become more aware and actually use that analysis to automate. We have a demo we're showing where we can identify a rogue node and actually move it into a container and take the resources away from it.
What does it mean, so
rogue node?
node?
In this case, the malicious node is trying to drain all the CPU from the robot and make it crash.
Okay.
And so we can quickly, with ROS2 monitoring, actually see that it's actually consuming too much resource, move it to its own container, and restrict the resources that it can consume. So again, these threat models are being picked up by other companies, and they're thinking about tooling that they can build on top of that. We recently, as part of the ROS2 dashing, worked with collaborators to actually put quality of service into ROS2, so you can actually test the liveliness. So these are things which we're talking about and actually trying to build more awareness of. We're giving a number of other presentations, but we're leading a working group on simulation, a discussion on simulation while here. So a lot of what we're talking about is exactly what we're working on back in our offices and our labs.
Okay. Yeah, so now that you mentioned, now I do understand the title of this movie of Star Wars, Rogue One.
Yes.
So I didn't understand the title. Now that you have explained to me the concept of rogue nodes, and I don't understand now. That's great. Sorry, it's my level of English, so that's what I have. What can I do? Then final. That's the final one. Promise. Then is so I see. And you mentioned that AWS is in the ROS2 technical committee.
Yes.
So what are your duties at that committee, and any interesting news that you can tell to the audience that are exclusive for us from the recent meetings that you had?
Absolutely. So to answer your first part of your question, I'll unpack that a little bit. The first part of what are our duties, like all of the other members of the Technical Steering Committee, they provide developer contributions. And as a community, we talk about what needs to be worked on ROS2. And as a community, then we divide up those tasks. But also we do community reviews, either for both the designs that we're leading, but also for we review other designs as well. So it's a peer and a community process.
Okay.
It's part of open source. So again, just to be active technical contributors, but also help chart the roadmap for ROS2 as a group. Talk about where the priorities are, how to work together so that all the effort is realized quickly, not being distributed all over the place for all different types. So as a community, we decided to work on ground mobility robots. That ROS2 Technical Steering Committee will continue to talk about what next and what other aspects of ROS2, what features need to be added to ROS2. So again, it's a number of teams all pulling in the same direction and in contributing actively to make it commercial grade. The second part of your question is what's new? We're here talking about our security working group. We have since handed that off to Canonical, which has great expertise in security. We're now focusing our efforts in ROS2 on tooling. A lot of the tools that develop tooling, yeah. Okay. So a lot of the tools that people use to understand what's going on the robot, RViz and all these other, we actually want to see if it's an opportunity to modernize and work with others to build new tooling. So great focus in 2020 for us on tooling for ROS developers. We've contributed a lot to ROS2 core. We're now turning our attention to simulation. So expect exciting things from us in simulation in 2020. Because simulation is so important. There's so much more to it than just running Gazebo. We want to contribute more to Ignition, Gazebo Ignition, but also start building other capabilities in our service for simulation. So stay tuned.
Okay, nice. I would like to be beta tester of those things if you have any program for that.
I would love to work with you.
You can count on me for testing that.
Thank you.
And providing a feedback on that. Okay, so exciting news. Not very concrete, but we have some ideas. So
I want to come back, so I got to leave some mystery for later.
Okay, exactly. That's it. That's the way that the TV series that they do that. So they build on that.
You got me. You got me.
Great. Okay, so that's all for today's interview. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Roger.
you, Ricardo. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. My pleasure. And that is all for today. Please leave us a review on iTunes telling us what you think about the podcast and what you would like to have. And that's it. That's it. Give us 5 stars in iTunes, please. And that's all for today. See you next week with a new lesson from the experts. And until then, keep pushing your ROS learning.